Disorganized attachment style. Let's talk about it. In our previous episodes, we talked about secure, anxious, and avoidant. And today we're going to be getting right into the disorganized. So in your opinion, Olga, what is the top criteria for disorganized in your mind?
I think that it's really the combination of anxious and avoidant, right? So you're talking about someone who wants love, who wants to be in a relationship, but has a hard time either feeling too obsessed with someone when they are, and then it kind of flip-flops. It kind of goes into perhaps avoidant if you're getting too close to someone. You start pushing away a little bit and getting maybe colder in that relationship. So that's the reason it's called disorganized, is because it's really this back and forth between being anxious and avoidant at the same time.
Yeah, the push and pull effect. Yeah, it really does make a huge difference in just different scenarios of where they're at. Maybe you're anxious in one scenario, but then you truly just want to, kind of pull away in a different scenario. And it really depends on just, what you've been through or certain circumstances in that scenario. But that push and pull effect is very important in disorganized.
And just like in all the other attachment styles, it really comes from how you were parented, who your caregiver was, what the relationship was growing up, and how you attach to someone, right? So It's really understanding that part, which is someone may have grown up with physical, sexual, emotional abuse, and then at this point you realize, hey, the person that I love is cool sometimes and it's okay, but other times they frighten me, they scare me. So it's this distrust that also happens, right? You want love, but you don't know what to expect. So you have to protect yourself, and you develop this system essentially that keeps you safe because you don't know if you can trust somebody. You don't know if they're going to hurt you.
Right. That fear and confusion factor that comes in all the time. You're just trying to protect yourself in most of these scenarios.
Absolutely. And it's frustrating for someone to have consistent, short-term relationships because the pattern can look like that you find somebody, you idealize them, you have all these images of them, who you think they are, you fall in love with them, you get obsessed, and you want to be around them all the time. And then abruptly, you might push them away and say, oh, they were getting too close. Whoa, I don't like this or that. Or you kind of convince yourself into pushing them away because a love doesn't feel secure.
Right. And you're protecting yourself from even just something as simple as like maybe there's a certain behavior reminded you of something that's happened to you before and you're like, oop, that is not safe. I'm going to go the other way.
Yes, exactly. The triggering moments that give you that kind of flashback and like, whoa, I didn't like that. That scared me and I'm not going to be a part of it.
Yeah. Or even if you don't have that self-awareness, maybe in the moment to just say, whoa, that scared me or that didn't feel good. But like the feeling itself may automatically trigger you to go the other way.
And I think you're right. It's not really about even being aware, like, you're having all these deep thoughts about what you're doing. It's really more of that response, right? It's that reaction that happens. And it's also frustrating because often the description is that you feel so overwhelmed and so in love, but then you feel nothing. And then you may be interested again, and then you want to resume the relationship. You feel okay. You've sort of processed whatever, consciously or subconsciously, and then you kind of go back. So it's the description of the personalized feeling too, is it really is on and off, right? So that emotional regulation really isn't there.
No, absolutely not. And of course, hand in hand with that is the trust that you have in others. It's, maybe some people you do trust, but I think a lot of the time you have a hard time trusting others because whether you've been hurt or not before, but mainly, if you have disorganized, you've probably had some trauma in your life or some kind of difficult situations that made you feel like you can't trust other people that are supposed to be trustworthy, quote unquote.
So fearful of others, not knowing what to expect or not wanting to have something unpredictable happen.
Right. Exactly. Unpredictability. I think that's a big thing too.
Well, in both directions, right? Yeah. Because at this point, you don't know what to expect out of yourself either. You're just kind of acting out what you're feeling in the moment. And if your emotions flip flop back and forth like that, it's pretty challenging to navigate relationships or work, really. I mean, so many different things get affected by this back and forth.
Yeah. And how do you cope with that? Sometimes part of this is that self-destructive behavior, right? Is like, that is how you cope by, by participating in self-destructive behaviors, because maybe that's how you coped with that in the past. Maybe that's all you've ever learned, right? But part of this is that self-destruction, unfortunately.
Because you really don't know what to do, right? And you just want to feel better. So generally, you're going to do things that will make you feel anything.
Right.
And it's not always through the best means. When in reality, if you are listening to this and you do feel like, wow, this sounds kind of like me, then the first step is to really identify who's within your circle and to be able to say, okay, which people can I trust or allow myself to trust?
Yeah.
And that's step one. And then following that, you really need to think about which of those people that I've selected, pick one that you can actually have a conversation about your feelings. And it's not going to be easy, right?
No, maybe you'll start small, right?
But the reality is if you have disorganized attachment style, you are not really good with talking about your feelings. Your feelings are not a priority to you. So communicating in terms of how you feel or emotions is very challenging. That's why I suggest starting with one person to figure out how to talk about your feelings, right? Because they're not ever a priority.
Right. And maybe this isn't even a person that's like a friend maybe in your life, but whether it's a teacher, a coach, I don't know, maybe your boss even, like start with somebody in your life that you feel like you can open up a little bit with, and then maybe work your way towards other people then too at some point.
Exactly. I mean, it's not easy, right? Because you are also scared that, hey, if I share my feelings, is somebody going to use those feelings to manipulate me? Which is, of course, terrifying.
And a possibility.
Yes,
I mean, in reality, it really is a possibility. But part of the experience of life, of self-awareness, of growth is kind of testing the waters to experiment with things.
Taking chances.
Taking chances. Exactly.
Because if you truly want something, you have to risk that you may get hurt. But the victory is if that person does offer you a safe space and really does feel nurturing to some degree to where you can share your feelings with them. It is wonderful. It's wonderful to be able to talk about good times, bad times, all the things in between, because that's part of like you said, part of the experience, to be able to share something with someone that's meaningful to you.
Right. And of course, part of that is maybe talking to a professional, a therapist, right? To maybe be able to start that journey if you don't feel like you have a person, let's say, in your life that you can confide in about anything, let's say. Maybe that's a irrational thought that you are experiencing, right? And so then maybe a trusted individual such as a therapist might be the person to start with.
True, because at that point, 100% that is a relationship that is going to be a place where you can trust that they're going to keep your confidence and your best interest in mind.
Right.
So definitely
be able to practice some of these skills, right?
Yeah, right. Within a little bubble to where no consequences are going to happen in your real world, because it is a relationship that is there to really be able to heal within.
Right. And of course, as we've mentioned with the previous attachment styles, being able to understand where these attachment styles come from for you, right, is a big part of it. I think, being able to process that with somebody and learn, like, why am I like this? Why do I behave this way? Why don't I trust people? Why don't I have stable relationships?
And I mean, it doesn't have to be super complicated to realize that, hey, something doesn't feel right. If you're somebody who always is looking at their phone all the time, checking, did my girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, did they text me? Did they text me? No, but I'm not going to text first. I'm not going to initiate that contact. That sounds, too scary, too vulnerable. But I'm always checking my phone. but I'm not going to be the first one to text. So you are living in this like
back and forth, back and forth, back and
and you're
forth.
in this state of anxiety,
Right.
but yet you're still not going to make that first move to have some type of connection or conversation. So it's a challenging place to live if that's the kind of perspective that you have, the kind of relationships that you experience. It's overwhelming, and there's a way to heal, and there's a way to be able to have a more secure attachment style to where you feel confident and you're trusting. I mean, not to a fault, of course, but
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that self-awareness is key. So being able to kind of self-reflect on those things, like you said, it's maybe not as hard to realize maybe you don't know what it is, but to realize that something just doesn't feel right, and to be able to just explore that idea.
And the reality is, you may not even know that it's odd because you don't spend a lot of time talking about experiences and feelings with others. Right? So it's the second that you start opening up with a trusted person, there will be a sense of relief. Like, wow, perhaps I'm not the only one who's ever dealt with this.
Right.
Or, wow, here are the things that you can do to truly start working on yourself to have a better, healthier life.
Yeah. And just at the very least, start building trust in others, that maybe they won't give you advice. Maybe they won't like solve your problem for you, but just to be able to see that, okay, somebody can sit there and listen to me and be respectful and not have an adverse reaction, and just be able to just talk to me about something. Maybe at the very least, that can help you start building that trust in other people, just as a generality.
Right. Which is crazy to think about, because truly therapists aren't here to give you advice. They're
Right.
here to let you finally talk without any reservations, without being on guard or scared or
Right.
or anything. It's a space for you to hear your own thoughts and go, whoa, I don't know if I like that, or man, I think I got to fix that a little bit. It gives you that space to be able to actually say the things that you need to say, because you possess your own solution to any problem that you have.
Exactly.
It's about having that space to be able to actually figure it out.
Right. You are your own solution.
Absolutely. It's in there.
It's in there. You just gotta kind of, go behind the little layers and unravel it a little bit, and it's there. You
Which
can do
the
it.
process isn't always comfortable or thrilling. Could be painful a little bit sometimes, but the end result is worth it if you want to be able to have more stability in your life.
Right, because the goal is to have a healthy attachment style, which is secure, and to be able to build and have healthy relationships.
Absolutely.